Hey, wow, whole table's rocking. Man, here we are, book launch day of the Wrestle. This is 2 years in writing, months in the waiting. And if you're joining me on Facebook or YouTube, thank you for being part of this. Thank you for everything that you guys have done, and I am going to attempt to use some new software here. Great way to start. I can see people commenting. That is awesome. So if you are watching this live, I'm happy to really answer questions or take requests for any readings of any poems in the book, which you may be aware of or not aware of. So I might even read one from here that hasn't been published. You may not have ever seen on Facebook or on my website. And I thought I'd unpack some of these too, but thank you. We have sold, even before today, before the official launch, just in Australia, over 500 copies of this book. And I'm as surprised as anyone that it's done that well. And people are like, no, it's not. Honestly, you know, poetry is one of those things that I never owned a poetry book for years, many years, just until the last few years. And I think it's something that finds you at a time. When I say I haven't owned a poetry book, 27% of the Bible is poetry. So technically, I do own a few poetry books. They're all in the Bible, and we call them scripture instead of poetry. Also, if you listen to songs and love lyrics, there's also forms of poetry. So it takes many forms. But a normal poetry book, there's a little thing that some of you may know on the back of a book called an ISBN, and so the bigger ISBN bodies track the sales, and so the average poetry book sells 98 copies. But we've sold 500 already, and that's just in Australia, hard copies, plus ebook and audiobook. On that, if you stick around today, towards the end or halfway through, I'll share with you a coupon that'll allow you to get the audiobook or the ebook for 20% off as well. So we're stoked. We're stoked, and this is an offering to the world, and we've just been blessed and can see the hand of God in the midst of it all. But I thought I'd open with the opening and closing blessing. So there's a repeat of a poem in the book, which is a blessing for the heart journey, and this starts the book and ends the book as well, kind of a bookend for it. And so let me read this for you guys today, and then I'll explain why I may not have got some publishing deals when this is already out. It's called A Blessing for the Heart Journey. Today, fellow fallers, recoverers, rescuers, winners, losers, famous and infamous, I bless you. The runners and the lame, the bankrupt and billionaires, the saints and sinners, the lost and lonely, I bless you. I bless you with knowing that the journey of 1,000 steps will be paved by potholes, sinkholes, assholes, and whatever it takes to make you whole, because you are human. I bless you with knowing that the invitation to face the world with an unveiled face may be done at your pace or never at all, because it's an invitation. But know this, by love and choice, Trinity's unmasked face shines upon you and is gracious to you. Trinity lifts up their faces towards you and offers you peace because you belong. It's a blessing for the heart journey. And one of the questions I get a lot is how much do you work on some of these poems? And the truth is some poems, and especially after publishing the book, or getting it ready early this year. I spend a little more time on polishing some poems up, or they sit half-baked and see if they finish, and some never a kind of birth, but some come out in like minutes. As I say in the intro, they feel like they've been with me for a long time, and they just find words in a quick moment. And this was one of those. This was the weekend that I met William Paul Young, who's the author of The Shack, who you would have seen featured quite a bit in my promotion for the book, because he was there. He was talking at a conference, and my friend Gary Grant said, "Hey, why don't you get up and say a prayer before we go to lunch?" And I said, "Oh yeah." But while Gary and Paul were both talking, I wrote that poem, A Blessing for the Heart Journey, and I shared it before the break. And Paul said, "That's amazing. Do you have more poetry?" I said, "Yeah, I've got a bit more." And that started that relationship. And if you've heard William Paul Young read my poems, he does such a stellar job, and owns them and lives in them and climbs into them and reads them in such a beautiful way. So that's why when he said, "Can I do the audio book?" I said, "I would love for you to do the audio book." So that's A Blessing for the Heart Journey. You'll notice it has the word assholes in it. And the funny thing was, at the start of the year, and this is for those who are thinking about writing books, etc., it went to a literary or a book agent, and then COVID hit, and then the book agent's business went quite south, and the publishing world's just changing dramatically with the capacity that we all have to publish ourselves. So they had said, "Hey, we're approaching some large Christian publishing houses. I don't think they'd be happy with the word asshole." And I think the word shit's in there as well somewhere, in a poem called Perfect Dad. There are 11,500 other words in here, but that's what the focus was on. And I said, I can't change it. It's so crucial to it, and it's just really important for me to have the words that I'd like to have in the book, more so than appealing to what an audience wants to hear. And this is art, this is poetry, and at the end of the day, if I'd sold 100 copies, I would have been like, well, it's an offering anyway. And that's kind of how I've approached a lot of this, is that it's all an offering. You can give, take it or leave it. What has been a great, some wonderful feedback so far is people who don't own any poetry books. This is the first book that they've bought, and they're like, "I usually don't like poetry, but there's something in this that I like." And that's a great compliment to somebody doing reading poetry, is that writing poetry and sharing it, is that you get fans to the craft. And so if I can see your comments in the comments, so if any of you have any questions, please do ask them. I'll read what I might do is read you one of the poems that, unless you buy the book, you'll never hear or read. But I'll read it for you now. But if you have any questions or comments, please do chuck them in the comments there. Some people emailed some questions into, but thanks for being here and celebrating with me, friends. It means a lot, a great deal. So this is called The Descent. The Descent. All that kept me buoyant became impossible to cling to. It held me at the surface, my head above water, my lungs full, my face bright, but I was sinking. I assumed gravity would be merciful. I thought if I cried out, you would reach down and pull me back to the surface, back to familiar surroundings, back to the life I had. But my cries only summoned exhaustion. My tears only added to the waters. No lifeline from you, no hand up from The heavens, the strength that brought me security, was failing. I was sinking. With heavy hope, I gave way to the descent. The depths of despair were colder and darker than I imagined. My only possessions were a pounding heart and pressing questions. How was it I was breathing underwater? Why did the darkness feel familiar? Where were you before? And why did I get the sense I was going to find treasure that no man could afford? I had sunk. The poor, the mourning, the meek, the hungry, all feast here with you. This Eden on the ocean floor, this terrifying baptism of acceptance. The descent. One of the inspirations for this poem, and there is a line here, how was I breathing underwater, was inspired by a poem called Breathing Underwater by Carol Balick, which features in a Richard Raw book of the same name, Breathing Underwater. And it has this beautiful story woven into it of the relationship a person has with their home by the sea, but how the neighbor of the sea comes to visit, and it ends in these two lines to say you swap your house, you exchange your house for a coral home, and you learn to breathe underwater. And it really is about some of the real overwhelming moments and parts of life, the real difficult or traumatic or deeply disappointing. And what I have learned in my faith is that it can be just such a bloody waste of time trying to swim to the surface. And in the first half of life, I speak as a middle-aged guy, really early on, and I think some of our theology doesn't help it, but we tend to think that if I just swim to the top of my drowning and get back up to the surface, then God will rescue me, you know. And it is shocking and challenging, and you die so many deaths when realizing that there is an Eden on the ocean floor, and there's a terrifying baptism of acceptance. And one of the major themes in the book is that I think we have just lost the art of lament. Like in our everything's positive, this life's good, your best life now, to quote Kate Bowler, this best life now that we're sold, which is not wrong, but it's not true all the time. And the best life now is often sold in this good times, that it's all about the God of the breakthrough. And I think one of the crucial things that positivism and so many things in culture today have robbed us of being able to find not the God of the breakthrough, but the God of the breakdown, and to be and discover who God is as a co-suffering, crucified Christ in Jesus, who, you know, descends to the pits of hell and rescues us and finds us there. And so that is a poem that means a lot to me, and I hope you like that. Lovely to see some comments here. James Condon, he wrote one of the forwards here as well in the book, so thank you so much, James. People were very generous with some of their endorsements. I should say not forward, but an endorsement for the book. And James is the Commissioner Emeritus of the Salvation Army in Australia. Great to have you online with us. Also Brad Jerzak, Paul Young, James Thompson from Compassion Australia, Steve Austin, author and friend of a book called Catching Your Breath, and went through, it just writes beautifully. I will answer somebody's question here, and maybe that'll prompt some of you also to ask questions in the comments. The question was, can you share your experience of being a private person who's shared so much of your inner self with public through your poems, and how has that impacted you? And do you have any tips for the rest of us who may be wondering how to navigate that kind of exposure? That's such a good question, and it was I needed my wife's wisdom on that. I had to ask her. So how do we? What is that? What is that? And Natalie just said, well, we really have dealt with a lot of our shame. We've dealt with our shame. Not completely, because I think it's something that you work with and it's part of your life, but we have worked through a lot of our shame. You've named it. I wrote a little article many years ago on my blog called The Shame Butler, and I talk about how we have this shame butler that follows us around and it whispers things to us. And one of the ways that you shut this thing up is by just sharing those things you might feel shameful about. And for sometimes that's just been private confessions with God. Sometimes that's been with family. Most often with good friends and safe people and counselors and prayer ministers. And that's how I've dealt with it. And the person asking that, I'm sure you can see that happen. I guess too, what is strange about kind of binding a book up like this is each of these poems has a story behind it and represents not just times in my life, but times in other people's lives too. I really have found a good use for my overextended empathy, and being a recovering kind of codependent rescuer, as you read through this, is find a good way to utilize this to bless others as well. And so I'd also say this, I guess there is a lot open here, and when you do publish it, it becomes a bit of a product, and you can tend to forget how personal this is, that when people read this, they really do get to know you. And I think I'm only just beginning to realize how I've really opened the door into my inner life and thoughts. But I don't know, I think this is part of the reason that you enter into the arts of sort, or you publish a book, or you draw, or you write, or you sing, is to give other people a portion of your life. You break a piece of that bread off and you cast it on the waters and see what happens. And sometimes others, that's bread for others, and others are like, oh, that's me too. And I do think perhaps just the timing of this book on the other side of, well, in the midst of COVID, I should say, we're not definitely on the other side yet at all, but I think we're over some of the initial shock of it, that this is a serious thing, and we'll be living in the ripples in the wake of this for many years to come. Is that right now across the world, people have been leaning on a view of who God was, that God is in control of everything and he will rescue us, etc. And they're losing loved ones, and they're losing businesses, and they're losing companies, and there's just tremendous loss in the world now. And that is part of the disappointment that comes. And so let me read for you Kind of Way, which is, it's a lengthy one, just a warning, but if you stick through to the end, you'll probably get what I talk about. And this is, I think, one of Paul's favorite. He reads this a lot. A lot of people have come across my work because of Paul's generosity and love for some of these poems, but this one's called Kind of Way. And this is very much an Easter kind of poem, a crucifixion poem. Kind of way. I know that you know, so I should probably confess it. not because it's a bad thing, but because it's normal and necessary to admit you've disappointed me and continue to. Although I don't mind as much now. Still, there were many times I prayed, followed the rules, gave my two mites, did all the things I was told would work, and others certified with charismatic conviction to do more, give more, faith more, sacrifice more, lots more. But still, nothing. No breakthrough like I believed, like I prayed for. I underestimated you. I wanted to believe you were containable and constrainable and reliable in the my way kind of way. The magician, hitman, slot machine, deal maker, earth shaker, genie in a bottle kind of way. And then I recalled that on a dark but necessary day, you took yourself in my kind of way and the cosmos to a cross. And then you went missing for 3 days, and my world fell apart. All my hope exhaled a forsaken surrender, and my heart broke and my dreams broke. My kind of way kind of died again. And there you were, alive and the same, but not really. A resurrected form of you that even took familiar friends by surprise. And that's what you keep doing to this day. You keep failing and disappointing me in the best kind of ways. Every time I think I've got you where I think I need you, you disappoint and disappear and turn up incognito on a familiar path, at a regular meal, in an average garden, with a spark in your eye that demands my attention. And you invite me again to put my hand in your side, embrace you and kiss you, and get to know you again in a new kind of way. Every time I think I've got you where I need you, you disappoint and disappear and turn up incognito on a familiar path, at a regular meal, in an average garden with a spark in your eye that demands my attention. And you invite me again to put my hand in your side, embrace you and kiss you, and get to know you again in a new kind of way. I have found that, let me shift gears. The book of Esther is interesting, and I only learned this in a trip to Israel with some friends and listening to a rabbi talk. He said, the book of Esther does not mention God, but we know that God is hidden within the book of Esther. And the word Esther in Hebrew rhymes with Hester, Hester, if you want to transliterate it. Hester. And Esther, which rhymes with Hester, everybody that hears the book, a Hebrew speaker that hears Esther will hear the word hidden. And the Jews talk about the Hester Panim. Panim is the word for face or faces. And the Hester Panim are the hidden faces of God. And it is kind of part of some of the Hebraic or Jewish theology that if you can't find God's face out here in these things, you have to know that he's hidden himself within you, within your experience. And this is kind of like the opposite of what we were taught, that seek God, find God, go after God, make great efforts after God, give more, do more, and God will transactionally be obliged to turn up as if like he's some kind of slot machine or deal maker. And I think for a while our ego really believes that is how it's working, and it has you believe you're really freaking powerful and you are a powerful force in the midst of all this, until like you go bankrupt you lose loved ones. God does not answer your prayer. You do not get rescued. You have that traumatic miscarriage. You have that traumatic hidden injury for many years. You suffer under that shameful addiction. You lose the marriage. You are wrestling with angels and God himself. And you realize this is not a game, and this is not about winning. This is about intimacy and Christ as a coat, like Jesus came in human form, lowly, like outcast, marginalized. And Jonathan Martin said something yesterday. He says, Jesus doesn't need us to stand up for him. He needs us to stand with him and with those that he stands up for. And I think it's such a crucial and important part of our faith journey is to discover both sides of Christ, the crucified, cruciform side, and to be able to be comfortable with breathing underwater and also soaring high above it as an eagle, to realize that God is not removed, and when you can't find him, he hasn't disappeared. My gosh, what a lie. What a lie that you can be separated from God. Like, you may not be thinking about him, but I can tell you that if Christ is the creator, then he holds the whole cosmos together, and he's in all and through all, and he's deeply invested in every moment that we're in. And so I think it's necessary that our kinds of way, that God disappoints us and then we get to discover him in a new way. Thank you for your comments and things. Let me read for you another one. So the book kind of has these, it goes through these themes, right? There's kind of an opening little page or two that explains bits and pieces throughout it. There's something called On the Way Down, and that's really where, you know, you're on your way down, the descent of things. And then on God, I share on what it's like to be empathetic and a highly sensitive person. If you're an Enneagram 9, you'll probably relate to this as well. I talk about boundaries, and then I write these ones called letters as well. And letters are kind of personified letters to things in us. Let me read you one called Dear Tears. It carries a kind of ocean theme as well. Here we are. Dear Tears. There you are, just under my breath, a part of me so fragile it's dressed in a salty sea of surf that breaks against the back of my eyes like generous waves knocking against a vessel's bow. This crafted vessel is the self I sail in most days. It's the me that moves at pace and cuts through seas of tears and tenderness until the wind dies. And there you are, tears, a swell birthed from miles away, days, weeks, years ago even, waves that have been waiting for me, waiting for a moment of exhaustion, of truth, of surrender, of stillness. It's strange how your waters bring such momentum, more so than the wind I work for. Still, I don't know why I refuse your help. You seem to know where I should be going much better than I. You seem to be on my side, guiding me to lost treasures of resolve, rest, and relief. Tears, thank you. You are the better navigator. You are the kinder force. May I be mindful of your knock, the ebb and flow of my breathing, and make way for your coming more often. That's Dear Tears. And it's been interesting having people say these poems where I write to emotion or personify them have really struck them, and they've found themselves quite overwhelmed as well, which is lovely, I think. If there's some of the inner work that I have done and an offering I can bring through some of my poetry, it's, I guess, a good decade invested in doing what I can to become emotionally healthy. It helps if your wife, it helps if you've been trained in prayer ministry. It helps if your wife, studied counseling. All these things help, but friends, you can do that too. And sometimes we need help. So that's Dear Tears. Let me know what you think of that in the comments as well. I don't want to take too much time here. 32 minutes is enough, but I thought I'd finish on the wrestle. Before I do, let me give you the this. If you want to buy this in ebook or audio book, that's, I've just put on a screen now. Hello Wrestle, one word, is the coupon code you can use. Okay, right there. Hello Wrestle. All right. And that's for the audiobook and ebook. You've got to go to davidtenson.com to get that. I've been able to get the audiobook. I'm at this stage. I've decided to just exclusively sell that myself. I have learned a lot. Not only written this book, but I had a friend help me with the art. I had a friend help me with the artwork. Andy Bridge, thank you so much. I had some people recommend some editors. Felicia, thank you for editing this. But I've done the layout. Everything has been kind of part of what the journey I've done. And you then go and you go to sell it. Paul generously, put the audio book together, recorded everything in a studio, and you put everything together, and then you put it on Audible or whatever. And then Audible can price it however they want, and for a $10 US sale, you get $2, and you're like, did I miss something here? So I found some ways to, because I have a tech background, and those have been following me for a while now. I've been selling stuff on my website for years, the soaking prayers and courses. So I thought I'd leverage that, put it in the publishing world. So the audiobook and ebook are both available. They're delivered really easily onto your phones, onto your devices, through your web browser. Really great and wonderful ways. And it just means that, to be honest, at the end of the day, I'm getting more than $2, and I'm not ashamed to say that. Amazon, bless their heart, they've got, Jeff Bezos has enough. Got enough enough money. I don't need to be handing them mine if I don't need to. So for now, that's all available at my website. Let me finish with the Wrestle. I hope you guys have got that code now. You can go on and get that. I'll hide this here. So this is the title poem, and I'll finish on this. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm so excited. And those who have been waiting in the US, who did order this print version on Amazon, etc., yours should be shipping off, I don't know when, in this next week or something. So I'd love to know what you think of the book. The Wrestle. I found you beyond the why, far from the why not, worlds from why me. You held a space for me. Beyond answers to questions my pain had, as if you knew information was never going to heal or resolve or fix my suffering. Instead, you agreed to wrestle through many nights, never letting go, always with me, just like you promised. Refusing to surrender, I eventually realized that wrestling with God was not a crime, that I was in fact being held, being healed, being transformed by finding you beyond answers, being blessed by holding on to you in my doubt and frustration and never letting go. And you never let go. And you overcame me in the end. And we both won. Friends, let me bless you with that poem, and if I could extend anybody permission to do anything, or if somebody goes, how do I start the hard journey and move into these spaces? Ask big questions, realizing that if you're wrestling right now, besides sex, right? Besides sex, I said it, there is kind of no more visceral activity, more intimate than wrestling, right? Let's just be adults here. Two people wrestling. You couldn't be more heart to heart, more close. It's there. And we have sometimes been taught, don't ask God the big questions. What are you wrestling with? And then, no, you should have faith. What a bunch of bullshit. The faith you have in the midst of your wrestle are all the big questions, is all the disappointment, is all the ways that you need to discover who God is in a new kind of way, friends. And you both win when you wrestle with God. He overcomes you, but you both win. And if there is something, the poems in this I wrote within 18 months, but I felt like they've come out of a decade of wrestling. Yeah, at least, plus other stuff. So, friends, bless you. Thank you for supporting it. It does make a lovely Christmas gift if you want to get it for some friends. Do take advantage of that coupon that I put up at the end there. It is Hello Wrestle. You can get the audiobook. That'll expire in about 5 and 8 days time. Feel free to get that. Thank you for joining me live or by recording. Shalom. Have a great day.